Hi, I think many of you in childhood had a box with the most precious things, so today I decided to make one. And the thing which inspired me is a new book named Anima the Golden Swift, written by Ekaterina Sobol. This anima is not connected with the studies of Carl Jung. The book is about magic, so my box will be, allegedly, for magical items. And it's likely that I will put my future projects in it. Initially, I wanted to make a wooden box wholly by myself, and I even started making a lid. One rectangular, two rectangulars, whoosh whoosh with a grinder, whoop, and now I have a frame, and whoosh whoosh with a cylinder. Then I glued everything, and here is the result. For the comfort of work, I printed the photo of the cover and cut it to better visualize what I'm going to do. Next, out of polymer clay, I made three basic elements. The wing, which I tried to sculpt differently, but eventually decided to make it feather by feather. A hand? No, guys, sculpting a hand is still beyond my capacity. A different matter is a dagger, which you can simply carve, and a bird sculpt, which is simply a bowl with a big and two small pits. Next goes clay, which as always became too brown, but it didn't matter for me, because I will partially dye it anyway, although the new color matched the original a bit more. But I was looking at this wooden something which I was making, and I couldn't say that it was appealing to me, although in fact the idea was brought to life step by step according to plan. In the middle of the cover, I wanted to place the golden letters, the name of the book, series of books, Anima. But I didn't want to complicate everything as in Travnik, not because of my laziness, but because I wanted to try something new. And then I got the idea to use Dutch metal, which I didn't have, so I went shopping. And there I found such a box in the form of papier-mâché book. And it was just the right size, plus it looked like a book, and we make a cover of the book, so I decided to decorate it. By the way, for such a decor, you can use, in fact, any box, if it has a separate lid. I'll show you an example using a box in which I usually dry flowers. You can cut it in these spots and glue to the main body to make it close and open like this. I printed out the cover one more time to make the letters, but on a smaller scale this time. On the cover itself, the letters are very glossy, so to achieve such an effect, as I have already told you, I will use a Dutch leaf. I make the stencil 4 letters, and of course don't forget about the Swift. This time I made up my mind to try one more new material for me. Air dry modeling clay, made by Fimo. My expectations were broken by reality. I thought that the texture of this material would be the same as polymer clay, but maybe it will harden by itself because it has different components. But this mass is like on one hand clay, real clay, and on the other hand it is like some paper mass. Probably it is paper clay, which I also wanted to try using, but for some reason on all the sides it is still called polymer clay. It is quite wet and pleasant to touch, and also you don't need to knead it, because it is very soft. I put it into the zip pocket to keep it wet, but because of this moisture, the stencil wasn't sticking to it. So for the letters I took the usual polymer clay. I barely rolled a layer, and I think it's high time for me to buy a pasta machine, or at least an acrylic roller. I placed my stencil on it, and here it is important to remember about the inner details, and began to press the paper along the contour. That was how I got the letters on clay, and then began to cut them out carefully. Some of the letters I separated for my convenience, and then I baked everything. Some of the small details was easier to cut when the clay became hard. But actually, they were cut out pretty craggly, so to give them a rather rounded and neat shape, I decided to cover them with top gel for manicure, which is quite thick. This gel also smoothed the details. First, right after the covering, I dried it up a little with a flashlight to stop this thick layer of gel from spreading over and make it curdle. After that, I dried up the letters in the lamp to make the gel harden completely. Now go the Dutch leaves. There is a special glue for them, which stays sticky after drying, and all these thin golden leaves perfectly stick to it. On the wing and the dagger there are golden elements as well, so I decided to imitate them using these Dutch leaves. I apply a thin coat of glue on the letters and the swift all over the whole surface, but on the wing I applied only on some feathers. After 10 minutes I carefully place some pieces of Dutch leaves and slightly press them. Then, using a stiff brush, I remove pieces which haven't stuck to it. Everything which I thought was excessive, I scraped off with a knife. The result is awesome, just what I wanted. Now let's get to the frame on the box. For it, I took the same air-dry clay and began to make the edges. Because of the heating in my house, air is really dry, so the clay dried up really fast. I didn't figure out by myself that while kneading you can wet this air-dry clay a bit with water as well as the usual clay, otherwise the gaps would be really hard to blend. Although I achieved an unexpected and at the same time suitable for me effect of cracked surface. For this you need to stretch your slightly dry clay and voila! It was also important to make a soft rise on the inside of this frame. Later you will understand why. Before leaving it to dry, I made the prints of these three elements, so that when I attach them, I will make the composition look complete. And you know what? This clay dried up in an hour. It didn't take a day. Maybe I had just made a thin layer, not something voluminous, but still. To be honest, some of the parts fell off, but it was easy to glue them back. Also, paint was spreading pretty good. These materials are meant for each other. This question doesn't come out of my mind. This is not polymer clay. Components. Refined clay and cellulose. Why do they write that it is polymer clay if it is paper clay? I tried to make the same color as on the cover. I also applied on the center a lot of silver acrylic paint. Apart from the fact that I painted the surface, it will also be our primer, because further I plan to pour resin on it. Don't forget that my box is made of cardboard. In the evening, without a camera, I decided to repaint this frame and give it a more natural color, like a clay, sandy, moldy surface. Inanimate earth. Then I paint the cover. I mixed red, brown and purple to achieve the burgundy color that for some reason I associated with Soviet books. And on the first try I achieved the desired color. This is a success, because often I can compare the process of mixing colors with brewing a potion. Because you add a little of this color, a little of this, again this one, but this one which I've added was a mistake, so I need to add this one, and so on. I apply the paint in several layers and paint over everything inside. Then I placed the letters on the lid and applied drops of UV resin around to glue them instantly. Also, I covered with resin, as if it was sealant, all joints of clay and cardboard. After that, I dry everything up under a lamp for 5 minutes. Now, I will fill this inner part with resin. But there was a crack, and it bothered me, because it might happen that suddenly resin would start flowing through it. So, on the outside, I covered it with hot glue from a glue gun. Next, I take the epoxy resin. This time it is my Epoxy Pro, which hardens for 24 hours instead of 48. I was really worried that my resin might spread over, so I wanted it to harden as fast as possible. I mix it according to the instruction, and a small part of it I put aside to paint in black. The rest of it I paint in transparent green. That is why previously I painted the surface with silver, because my green dye is transparent and the background will shine through it. However, it seemed to me too bright, so I added a tiny little drop of black into it. Great! Then I make a thin outline with black resin. After that, I pour the green resin with a syringe into the center. Next, I barely mix these colors. Or I should say, I rather distribute the black, so it would be like these clots of darkness. On the cover there are also such sparkles, and I have such sparkles. I can't help myself using them. I placed these sparkles and then I had to leave. I was very afraid that my glitter would move closer to the corner, because once it happened to me when I was decorating a clock, I was really afraid that the resin could spread all over the table, because who knew how well this clay was glued to this cardboard, and if cardboard got wet, no idea how this clay would behave. I was also very afraid that my black clots, my black and green, might mix together and make a gradient, because the resin was too liquid, well, relatively liquid, but still, so this whole idea might have been ruined. But no. This time I came back and it had hardened as I wanted. You can't imagine how happy I was. All these waves still weren't here, and the glitter was on its place as well. However, when I peeled off the silicone plug, it removed the layer of paint, but this was easy to fix. Actually, these are trifles if to compare to what could have happened. For decoration, I also decided to use twigs of Virginia creeper and moss, just a little of moss. I glue the missing details, and yeah, I decided to make eyebrows on the skull. I glue a bit of moss and sticks into the gaps. Now, what shall be inside? Of course, magic. And magic is about glitter. I take acrylic glossy varnish and glitter. Choosing from gold glitter, I preferred this one, because it looks better with my burgundy, and it seems to me that this color is somehow more noble. And then I mix them. I pour a lot of glitter to make the coating denser. And I begin to paint the walls inside the box. The varnish will dry and become completely transparent, and the glitter will sparkle. With the same varnish but without glitter this time, I covered the Dutch metal, so I won't accidentally peel it off. Recently at my place I found such fabric. I was super happy because it perfectly matched the color inside. I cut out the needed size, but then it was a torture to figure out how to attach it. If you use glue, fabric might get wet, and when it will be dry, it won't be that soft as before. So I did such a pillow using this material and covered it with some cloth. Next, I attached it using hot glue, but it looked much worse. So I teared everything off, I had to ruin the upper layer of cardboard, and after that I simply put a piece of cloth inside. To fix it, I applied hot glue around the perimeter and covered it with moss. The result was quite magical. There are two types of magic in this book: darkness, black and green dark forces which poison all living things, and the magic that comes from a kind heart, anima. This magic has a golden color, and these golden letters break through the darkness that poisons the earth. I put such a medallion here. Only once I put it on for the photo session. You can see this photo on my Russian channel. But I don't really know what this medallion means, so let it just be here. I also have such a mockingjay, which definitely must belong here, and two natural stones, a pomegranate heart and a chrysolite triangle. The camera is absolutely not able to show you how they can shine, especially in the sun. They can be used to create jewelry, but for now let them be here. I hope this video was interesting for you, and I also hope that it managed to give you some inspiration. I love you this much. Bye!